James writes, I'm currently helping a nonprofit organization through the dissolution process, and I was recently asked by a board member when the board is considered terminated and directors are completely relieved from their duties. Does this happen when the articles of dissolution are filed? So, Mike, this is an interesting one. I've been working on a lot of dissolutions past few years. Conceptually, this is a little trickier than you might think. There's a few phases to the dissolution process, broadly speaking. There's all the lead up where you're kind of streamlining your operations and trying to get out of contracts. That kind of happens before a lot of time, and we've written about this. I'll post to my piece about the dissolution process. But once you get actually into being ready to shut down, there's first the board authorization to dissolve. Then there's filing the articles of dissolution with the state where you're incorporated. There might be some attorney general notices in between. And lastly, there's the wind up or wind down process, which happens after articles of dissolution are filed, but you're really doing the final sweep up and closing your bank accounts and just all the last final steps to put you to be ready to file your last 990 when you have zero assets. So the tricky part of this, conceptually, when you file articles of dissolution, the board is not terminated per se, in my view, but what happens is the role of the board and the responsibilities and the expectations upon filing articles of dissolution are just drastically condensed and streamlined. Their only responsibility and the organization's only purpose for existing at that point is to do the wind up, wind down, close out the organization, get everything liquidated, accounts closed, everything done. And at that point, which is sometimes a little hard to pinpoint, but that's when the board functionally has no other role, no other duties. It doesn't go away on the articles of dissolution. That just switches the purpose of the organization to being much more limited, and the board responsibilities as a result are much less at that point. But typically, authorizing the filing of articles of dissolution will be the last official act as a board. So, does that make sense? I find this one conceptually hard for clients sometimes.
Yeah, Ben, you know what's going I think you really stated that well. I wanted to add one thing to it is most organizations don't have a procedure behind that. And I'm talking about really
Mm-hmm.
sophisticated groups because nobody wants to consider that. And to me, that could be part of a risk management plan. It could be part of a disaster, a plan for when events change. It's just another, almost like a checklist, and you could go in and define roles.
In a sense, I can see the virtue in that, in just kind of demystifying what this process would be and having some things kind of worked out in advance. In another sense, that is an extreme level of contingency planning. For an organization that maybe is doing fine, no reason to think they're ever going to go away. But I would say this, Mike, if I could see that being helpful, if just for like a few paragraphs or a
Oh, it's
page
very
to say,
short just to have
right,
something versus having nothing. Because I think, Ben, the key point to this is not the requirements of the law here. It's just people to understand what the process is.
and it's tough to predict too much. That's another thing about these policies and procedures. Who knows what the circumstances are that are going to drive a dissolution? But if you just want to paint a picture of the overall parameters, that's fine. And if it's very brief, just to give people an idea and say, what voting thresholds required and
Exactly.
who's going to
Yeah.
be looking over the process, kind of from a delegation of duties point of view. I think that certainly has
And you
value.
can make a statement without saying how you're going to exactly do it. And it really comes the sticky point to me is those remaining assets. And you say, at the time we will consider, continuing a program or, looking at other organizations. I mean, just keep it pretty wide open. But it's that
Yeah.
the board at some point has got to decide if there's, if there's $10 left over, board doesn't matter.
Hmm.
But there's hundreds of thousands of dollars left over, which Ben, you and I have seen. You want to give real thought to that.